All right, let me read what you said. Oh, we're pulling into lens now. Okay, that's cool. See, do I have any fucking gifts? Just like the live and repost. Hey, baby. Can you go back up there? Still talking about his political writings. We're on why we use violence. We addressed to Accra Positive Action Conference, April 1960. So if you can just please like the live as much as you can. I'm tired of wait. All right, let's see if we can get my live up to 1,000. I can see you, Yusuf. I'm waiting for 1,000. Well, it doesn't matter. Fuck it. Let's see if I got any coins. I don't know if I got any Yusuf. Don't know if I have any. Oh, I have 18. Oh, yay. That's all I got. That's all I got, Yusuf. Not too much. That's all I got there. Sorry. I'm pouring a different way. Hey, no problem, Yusuf. No problem. All right, let's get started. I think we can get started. I'm not sure. Make sure. I have to wait for, I don't know if I should start now or wait. Let me see. Oh, they aren't able to tell me. I can up you, but I probably don't have any coins. People can like the live, that'd be great. I'm gonna go ahead and start. And if they, I don't know. Let's find out. Well, we'll start. All right, Phenon time. Why we use violence? 1. I think that all the concerns that preoccupy Africa today have been tackled with mastery, with clear-sightedness in the speech of Dr. Nakrum. Today I would like to share with you some of the reflections that have been prompted by certain passages. The problem of violence and that of the racism of African states will be questioned, that I would like to fraternally to discuss with you. I do not want, you may well understand, to proceed today to a critique of the colonial system, but do not intend as a colonized man speaking to colonized people to demonstrate that the colonial state is an abnormal, inhuman, and irreprehensible state. It would be grotesque on my part to want to convince you of the unacceptable nature of colonial oppression. However, I would like to focus on my reflection on the violence integral to colonial oppression. Colonial regime is a regime instituted by violence. It is also by force that the colonial regime is established. It is against the will of the people, and that other people more advanced in the techniques of destruction or numerically more powerful have prevailed. I say that such a system established by violence can logically only be faithful to itself, and its duration in time depends on the continuation of violence. But violence which is in question here is not an abstract violence. It is not only a violence perceived by the spirit, it is also a violence manifested in the daily behavior of colonizers towards the colonized. Apartheid in South Africa, forced labor in Angola, racism in Algeria, politics of hate. These are the manifestations of a very concrete and very painful violence. Colonialism, however, is not satisfied by this violence against the present. The colonized people are presented ideologically as a people arrested in their evolution, pervious to reason and capable of directing their own affairs, requiring the permanent presence of an internal ruling power. Okay, cool. The history of the colonized people is transformed into meaningless unrest. And as a result, one has the impression that for these people, humanity began with the arrival of those brave settlers. What I say here is of capital importance for the history of errors that can confuse human reason. Violence in everyday behavior, violence against the past that is emptied of all substance, violence against the future, where colonial regimes presents itself as necessarily internal. We see, therefore, that the colonized people caught in the web of the three-dimensional violence, a meeting point of multiple, diverse, repeating, cultivated violence, are soon logically confronted by the problem of ending the colonial regime by any means necessary. This violence of the colonial regime is not just lived on the level of the soul, but also that of the muscles, of the blood. This violence that wills itself to be violent, which becomes more and more boundless and irreparably revokes the birth of any internal violence in colonized people, and a just anger is born that seeks to express itself. The role of the political party that takes the destinies of these people into its hands is to curtail this violence and to channel it by providing it with a peaceful platform and a constructive basis. Since for the human spirit, which contemplates the unfolding of history and which tries to stay on the ground of universal, violence must first be fought with the language of truth and of reason. But it happens, alas, and there cannot be anyone who does not deplore this historical necessity. It happens. I say that in certain enslaved regions, the violence of the colonized people, of the colonized, becomes quite simply a manifestation of his strictly animal existence. I say animal, and I speak as a biologist, for such reactions are after all only defensive reactions reflecting a quite banal instinct of self-preservation. And the achievements of the Algerian Revolution is precisely to have accumulated in the grandiose way and to have caused a mutation of the instinct of self-preservation into value and truth. For the Algerian people, the only solution was this heroic struggle, the heart of which they had to crystallize their national consciousness and deepen their attributes as an African people. And no one can deny that all this blood spilt in Algeria will definitely serve as a levian to the great African nation. In certain colonies, the violence of the colonized is the last gesture of the haunted man, meaning that he is ready to defend his life. There are colonies which fight for freedom, independence, for the right to happiness. In 1954, the Algerian people took up arms was at that point the colonial prisons became so oppressive that it was no longer tolerable, because the hunt was definitely on for Algerians in the street and in the countryside, and because finally it was no longer a question for the Algerian of giving a meaning to his life, but rather of giving one to his death. We have found out from the press and from the radios that a European was recently sentenced to death in Kenya for having killed an African. Well, in Algeria, such a thing is impossible. On the contrary, I think they would congratulate a European who did something like that, and they would give him a medal for pacification. The millions Europeans living in Algeria pose particular problems. The colonialists in Algeria are afraid of the Algerian nation. Physical fear, moral fear. This double fear translates into aggressivity and severely homicidal conduct. At the basis of this behavior, we find one degree, a very powerful guilt complex. If the Algerians, they say, should one day rule Algeria, they would certainly do what we colonialists have done and make us pay for our crimes. 2 degrees. There is also a certain Manichaean conception of humanity which would always divide it into oppressor and oppressed. And there are tackle the second point. And here I tackle the second point of my speech, which refers to racism in Africa. We Africans are not racist, and the Honorable Dr. Nkrumah is right when he says, quote, "The concept of Africa for the Africans does not mean that other races are excluded. It only means that Africans, who are naturally the majority in Africa, should govern themselves in their own countries. We struggle for the future of humanity, and it is a most important struggle. The colonialist in Algeria says that Algeria belongs to him. We Algerians, we say, quote, we agree. Algeria belongs to all of us. Let us build it on democratic basis and together build an Algeria that is commensurate with our ambitions and our love." The colonialists reply to us that they do not want to change Algeria. What they want is an Algeria that perpetuates its current state internally. In reality, the French settlers do not live in Algeria. He reigns there, and each tentative attempt to change the colonial status provokes extremely murderous reactions from the colonialist. 14 days ago, our brothers in South Africa expressed their hostilities to the laws promulgated by the Union's racist government. 200 deaths were reported. We cried for our South African brothers, criticized the South African government, condemned the South African government, and we say that this international moral pressure is a major asset in the struggle for African freedom. But on 8th May 1945, almost 15 years ago, the Algerian people marched in the main city of Algeria to demand the release of certain political detainees and the application of human rights on the national territory. At the end of the day, 45,000 dead Algerians were buried. These figures, which revolt any conscience, are the figures recognized by the government of the French Republic. Until now, not one Frenchman has been brought to justice to answer for any one of those 45,000 deaths. What we are saying is that we need to close our ranks. It is necessary that our voice should be powerful, not only by being vigorous, but also for the concrete measures that could be taken against this and that colonial state. African comrades, may the day never dawn where we can still see in 24 hours 45,000 African citizens swept away by colonial barbarism. We must really make the white settlers hesitate and the nations that support them. In Angola, where 200,000 Portuguese rule by terror. In Rhodesia, where the monstrous face of racism shows itself with unparalleled violence. In Kenya, there are valiant brothers Jomo Kayentia rots in prison, and where the settlers do not despair of fighting a final victorious victorious battle. The settlers, such as one finds in Algeria, in Angola, or in Kenya, in Rhodesia, ostensibly hostile to any attacks on his supremacy. We do not say to the settlers, quote, "We are strangers. You are a stranger, go away." We do not say to him, "We will take over the leadership of the country and make you pay for your crimes and those of your ancestors." We do not tell him that to the past hatred of black people, we will oppose the present and future hatred of the white man. We say to him, "We are Algerians. Banish all racism from our land, all forms of oppression, and let the enrichment of humanity." The settlers reply to the French government supports him. Algeria is French. In Angola is Portuguese. In the Union of South Africa, is a white state. To the declaration of the Algerian Prime Minister, Fiat Habes, in which he solemnly appealed to the Europeans of Algeria as Algerian citizens, a declaration whose soaring thoughts and moving terms has made an impact on the most pro-French Western countries. General de Gaulle responded under the pressure of the settlers and the army that it was necessary to destroy any idea of an Algerian nation. Rather than recognize Algerian national sovereignty, the French government preferred to change its government 6 times, and once its constitution. And in the Fifth Republic set up by General de Gaulle, experiences, despite the atomic bombs set off in the Algerian Sahara, more and more difficult moments as a result of the prolongation of the war in Algeria. In our military hospitals of the resistance, the Algerian wounded taken prisoners by the French are often cowardly, savagely slaughtered in their beds. We treat tortured Algerians. We take care of Algerian women who have become wild after grapes and torture. And we bury by the dozen Algerians shot in the back. And the valiant Yugoslavian people are welcoming at an accelerated rate Algerian amputees, dismembered, blind, and I say that if anger does not overwhelm whoever witnesses such things, it is because he lacks the dimensions. Besides, it should be pointed out that it is first of all this anger, this immense repulsion from the French atrocities which have directed towards our ranks the greater part of Europeans in Algeria who are members of the FLN today. Sometimes it is the own children of policemen who have been obsessed by the cries of the tortured during the night. You now understand why some Christians, some priests are also active within the FLN. Why today there are Europeans in Algeria, descendants of settlers, who die under the French bullet in the ranks of the valiant National Liberation Army of Algeria. The fact is that behind this anger, by coming into contact with extraordinarily exhilarating messages of the Algerian Revolution, Europeans have discovered their love for their Algerian homeland and refined their national spirit. No, the violence of the Algerian people is neither a hatred of peace nor a rejection of human relations, nor a conviction that only war can put an end to the colonial regime in Algeria. The Algerian people have chosen the unique solution that was left to them, and this choice will hold firm for us. General de Gaulle said, quote, "We must break the Algerian people." We replied, quote, "Let us negotiate, find a solution that is commensurate with the contemporary history. But know that if you want to break the Algerian people, you will have to accept seeing our armies break themselves against the ramparts of the glorious Algerian soldiers. So many Africans have died to defend the sovereignty of European states, that it is worth it today when Africans agree to die for the freedom of Africa. In my presence here in Ghana, as official representative of the GPRA, the Algerian flag flying over Accra, proves that the government and the people of Ghana support the Algerian people, found an unconditional hope on their victory, and bear a warm and fraternal esteem towards the glorious soldiers of the Algerian army. My presence here witness that Algeria is amongst you, and that you make her suffering and her hopes your own, and that in the very precise way a great leap forward has been taken on the path of unity and African greatness. France Fanon, Accra, April 1960. Translated by Robert J.C. Young. 23. The Stooges of Imperialism. Provisional Government of the Algerian Republic Mission in Ghana, 14th December 1960. To assert that every period of history has its own particular characteristics is simply a commonplace. The colonial era, for instance, has a psychology of its own, heroes and traitors, all of its own. Before colonialism collapsed in Africa and around the world, Africa could quite seriously maintain, and that Europe was absolutely necessary. To put the matter more concretely, you could see African politicians fighting against African brothers of theirs who had resolved to fight for the liberation of their countries. However, it must be said that these anachronisms have by and large disappeared. None of them were real traitors as such, cautiously and desperately so, though today a few die-hard individuals can still be observed here and there. Indeed, the activities of the fighters who carried out the rearguard struggle for colonialism were somewhat hidden under a veil of decency and prudence. We could, without much difficulty, notice in them a dependency of or inferiority complex, or to put it the matters more bluntly, very definite tendencies towards fawning, but never a concerted attitude of treachery, such as we have just witnessed in the case of the leaders of the Senegalese missions of the United Nations. In truth, a good number of African leaders knew that the French community, which came to the light of day in a moment of confusion and irresponsibilities, argued no good, even when viewed from a distance. To many of the governments set up in these countries by the French government are clearly pursuing an African policy stamped with felony. The United Nations political committees, debates on Algerian problems, have just confirmed, and this is unfortunate for the viewpoint of African dignity, that in 1960, a year that some have called the Year of Africa, some representatives of African people still talking about healing the open breaches made in the stronghold of colonialism, and about struggling valiantly in the order of prolonged Western rule over the men and women of Africa for a few years or even a few days. For the past 6 months, the French government has known that the United Nations was prepared to stray from its abstract attitude with this year, and intervene concretely in the colonial wars in Algeria. France, Western allies, had warned her that they should no longer openly fight to maintain French Algeria. At the point of French government began hastily setting up its community, urging merely phantoms, not to say puppet states, to join the United Nations, and instructing them to commit to a particularly dangerous and deadly political campaign, like mercenaries who are exposed to the deadliest blow and are content to allow the national troops or allied groups to act as reservists. This hardly prevented Dr. Dea from dropping his mask and revealing his treacherous, felonious face, along with Dr. excuse the name, I can't say it, Diabarasi, who has spent the past 6 years visiting one African region after another in search of the strictles and sweetmeats of corruption, from advocating in front of the entire world defense of France and its attempt to eradicate the people of Algeria. After Abiy, Yulu failed to secure a simple postponement of the debate. Mr. Dai, then showed his veiled hand. He asked the United Nations not to condemn France, and to have confidence in de Gaulle, and in the same breath, reiterating the colonialist favorite theories. He states that he had noted certain tendencies of a provisional government of Algerian Republic, tendency towards extremism, moderation, and flaccidity. Finally, to crown his efforts, Mr. Dea asked the United Nations to trust him or his community complacency. With the task of organizing and supervising a referendum in Algeria. The African delegation at the United Nations unanimously condemned the intervention made by the spokespeople of France, of French colonialism in Africa. The most often used expression used to qualify their schemes is the word betrayal. And in fact, we have witnessed a deliberate act of betrayal. The Ajadine Conference, which was held behind closed doors, did not indeed reek of a conspiracy. After this, we saw Dr. Dia's famous trip to Tunis, during which he defended colonialist theory with adored conviction and passion. Today, the mask is off. Mr. Dia appears as no more than a miserable puppet, disavowed by history, and awaiting to be sent to the Chamber of Horrors. And he shall indeed be regulated there. We Algerians have pledged never to recoil before any obstacle. The armored divisions of the French army, the thousands of aircrafts, the electrified lines, one of these things have defeated our will to overcome. We have had traitors whom we have liquidated. Mr. Dao, a traitor to the Senegalese nation, which he has sold to the French colonialists, today extends his treachery to the whole of Africa and is now willing to sell Algeria. But he ought to know that Algeria will not allow itself to be sold. For six years, our people have been subjected to the most murderous blows ever dealt a colonial people. This people will not allow the likes of Dia and his mob to foil its victory. Since Mr. Dia has attacked us, we will respond, and our response will be pitiless. Mr. Dia was asked if he would consent to firing upon Algerian patriots. He said he would reserve his response. Let him be sure that no Algerian patriot will reserve his response. Some odious creatures exist in Africa would be rid of them as a matter of urgency. It's a Comprador class. That's what we call a Comprador class. General de Gaulle's trip to Algeria. On November 1st, General de Gaulle launched his first offensive of his United Nations operations. In a speech addressed to the French nation, which in truth was primarily aimed at the world public opinion, the President of the French Republic seemed to make important concessions as regards form to the ideal of an Algerian nation. He said out loud that the whole world is thinking, namely, that the war in Algeria has reached a deadlock. That is, that it must be brought to an end, and that the sovereignty of the people of Algeria has to be recognized. By showcasing this generous program, General de Gaulle hoped to sabotage the United Nations debates in the war in Algeria. Has happened every year on the eve of the debates. The various French governments indeed act ostensibly for no other purpose than as a saying goes, to get round the United Nations. Last year we heard the famous speech about self-determination. This year we had the right to an Algeria, to the Republic of Algeria, associated with France. After having mourning the loss of French Algeria, General de Gaulle today dreams of an Algeria, in form only, one that would essentially remain French in substance, an Algeria that is part of the community like Gabon, or the Abyei, Ulus, Congo, and Algerian Shorn of the FLN and of the Algerian Revolution. In short, every French Algerian. But What General de Gaulle does not grasp is that such an Algeria is a mere figment of his imagination. There is no place for an Algerian without the FLN, because the FLN is nothing less than the assembling of Algerian people driven by the resolute desire to achieve independence. The second phase of the campaign then got carried out by the handsomely paid Defense Council of the French community, whilst General de Gaulle was simultaneously to test support for his program by organizing a plebiscite in Algeria. We know today exactly what this trip taken between 9 and 14th December 1960s amounted to. The settlers in Algeria refused to let de Gaulle enter Algeria and maintain a system of social violence, such as exist in fascist countries and place where barbarism prevails. And in the midst of that wave of violence, the Algerians of the towns who have been so often harassed and tortured, these very people holding the Algerian flag high, filed past and gave Prime Minister Fiat Abbas a long ovation, paying solemn tributes to the custodian of our ideal, the National Army of Algerian Liberation. French troops, once again with the assistance of the settlers, pitilessly machine-gunned the Algerians, leaving more than 200 dead and 2,500 wounded. These dead and wounded testified to world opinion, testimony where needed, that there can be no third force in Algeria, that the people are unanimously entrenched behind the world of here a line is missing from the original of this mimeographed brochure. So that's what they're saying. Okay. These dead and wounded also remind the world that this war, which has plunged Africa into mourning, has for 6 years revealed characteristics that are at once tragic and terrible. The defenseless people is mowed down by machine gun and armored cars. Women and children are machine gunned from the air. Policemen indulge in torture. Such has been the natural order of the existence in Algeria for over the past 6 years. However, in spite of this ignominious treatment of the people, continue to affirm in broad daylight their attachment to the idea of independence and their active adherence to the glorious Algerian National Army. So unexpected was the situation of General de Gaulle's encounter during his trip that he cut it short and hurried back to Paris. Today he has all the elements of the problem. Either negotiate with this provisional government of the Algerian people, or else keep on nursing his morbid dream of setting up a irresponsible puppet Algerian Republic. During its full debate on Algeria, the United Nations will also have had the opportunity to assess this urgency of the need to intervene directly in this war. Intervene indirectly in this war faced as we are within the French government's bankruptcy and impotence. After the failure of Meloun, the provisional government of the Algerian Republic has been isolated, left without a valid interlocutor. The United Nations must therefore fulfill this mission, organize and supervise a referendum in Algeria. Next one, 24, letter to Ali Sharatia. I can't say the name. Introduction by Sarah Sharatia. During his stay in Paris, 1956 and 1964, Ali Sharati became acquainted with Frantz Fanon's work in person. This Iranian militant, a staunch patriot and a Democrat, was a member of the National Front of Dr. Mossadegh, leader of the movement of the National Iranian Oil. At the time, Sharati was a student at Louis Massagona, 1883 to 1962, Jacquin Barqueux, 1910 to 1995, and the Islamology, and of George Grivich, 1894 to 1964, and Henry Lefebvre, 1901 to 1991, in sociology. Moreover, in philosophy, he was influenced by the phenomenology and the existentialism thanks to Sartre and Merleau-Ponty. In these years, the war in Algeria was in full swing. Chateaubriand did not hide his sympathies for the fight of the Algerian people and the FLN, with which entirely by chance he came into direct contact in the Algerian barber's salon. The barber, an FLN member, put him in touch with the Parisians network that would make use of his small student room. On the basis of this collaboration, he began to read passionately all the revolutionary literature of the time, which was later qualified as a third worldist. He was especially impacted by Farhat Abbas, La Nuit, Colonial, and Amer. These are all French words. I can't say. Combat with, published in 1962 by Gilliard. This is how he came to know Fanon and began translating him into Persian to introduce him to the Iranian intellectual world and to urge his owing entourage to carry on this work. He translated the conclusion of La Damas, and this is all French, by the opening of Sartre's preface before starting on the unfinished translation. From this work, a series of, I think it might be Wretched of the Earth, I'm not sure, it's all in French. From this work, a series of more complete individuals and collective translations would later be born. Prior to this, he had contacted Fanon and tried to maintain a correspondence with him. Fanon died on the 6th December 1961 at the age of 36. And Charati left France more than 2 years later, in March 1964. In the forward address to the readers, he was treatise and Islaminology, complete works. Charati cites a letter Fanon sent him from El Mujahideen office in 1961. He introduced Fanon as follows: I would very much like, at the end of this dialogue with you, in this forward, to read a passage from a letter from Frantz Fanon, my genius friend, one of the most beautiful, heroic figures in these cowardly times. A letter that he wrote to me during the last days of his life. The world of Islam has fought against the West and colonialism more than all Asia and all of Africa. These two enemies of Islam have inflicted serious wounds on its body and soul, and it bears alone the hatred of these enemies, which have struck it more frightfully than they have others. And although I do not feel the same way towards it as you, I would like to emphasize more than you do yourself your remark that Islam harbors more than any other social power and ideological alternatives in the third world, or, with the permission, the Near or Middle East, both an anti-colonialist capacity and an anti-Western character. I hope that our authentic intellectuals may, with a view to raising the working masses' universal consciousness with their country and mobilizing them from the defensive struggle against aggression and the temptation of venomous and dubious ideas, as well as about methods and solutions coming from Europe. I hope that the authentic intellectual may make good use of the immense culture and social sources harbored in Muslim societies and minds, at the aim of emancipation and the founding of another humanity, another civilization, and breathe this spirit into the rare bodies of the Muslim Orient. It is incumbent on you and your colleagues to accomplish this mission. Of course, I know that despite appearances, your effort to this end are not incapable, with my aim to build and unite the harmonious nation of this country of the third world, developing world. Instead, I might have this developing country of the world, since that in actual fact unites us, leads me to recognize this approach as a great intelligent step towards my ideal. Nevertheless, I think the reviving sectarian and religious mindset could impede this necessary unification, already difficult enough to obtain, and divert the nation yet to come, which is at best a nation of becoming, from its ideal future, bringing it instead closer to its past. This is what I continue to dread, and what makes me makes me anxious about the efforts of the outstanding militants of the Association of the Maghrebian Yamalis.
Nipples vary in size, but new research finds the size, shape, and even sensitivity of your nipples may explain more about you than you think. When it comes to nipple size, studies show...
However, religious spirit and our efforts to mobilize this great power now prey to eternal conflicts or impaired with paralysis for the aim of emancipating a large part of humanity threatened by alienation and depersonalization. Those returned to Islam appears as a withdrawal into itself, is a path you will have taken in the manner of Senghor, Jomo Kayante, Nyerere, and Katabi Yakasin, all of whom undertook to revive African nationalism, or else of Henry Adjali's revival of classicism. As for myself, although my path diverges from and is even opposed to yours, I am persuaded that both paths will ultimately join up towards the destination where humanity lives well. Part 5. No, part 4. No, wait. Yeah, 5. No, 6. No, wait. Yeah, 6. No, that's 4. My bad, that's 4. Published Fanon, France and Italy, 1959 to 1971. Introduction. Jean Khalifa. Publishing Fanon has not been easy. Onward from his second book, I think it might be the Wretched of the Earth. His publisher, Francois Marsa-Proyo, continually occurred judicial and, of course, financial risk. We learn about this in a letter in which Marsa-Pro suggests giving the book of a university monograph type title in order to avoid attracting the police attention, at least long enough to get the volumes out of the print shop. Difficulties also emerged to obtain the type scripts. Claude Lazaman clandestinely brought back some character of La Demoines, I think it's Wretched here, when and as each was completed. Complexities of meaning and organizations also arose, and as indicated in his letter of 20th July 1960 and 12th May 1961, the exchange with Marsa-Proyo about the polemical tone and the almost official aspect of the introduction shown that Fanon himself was subject to various constraints and to changing circumstances. First and foremost, however, all the various plans for publication, rather the book project plan in July 1960s, which was later to become, or the arrangement of volumes for the project Italian edition, as detailed in the correspondence with Pirelli, make clear that Fanon, while continuing to deepen his fundamental concerns in psychology, history, and culture quests of identity, the emancipaation of negritude, and historical responsibilities, and so on, also considered his text to be interventions with their own historical and geographical situatedness, supple for inform, and oh my gosh, agitationist. Oh my gosh. Hold on, I gotta check out this word. First word to look up. Thank you for reposting. Appreciate it. Okay, I'll do it later. ATTESTATION.
Attestation.
Attestation. of a living in multiple thought, very precisely engaged in their time, and not as books bound for canonical ratification. Hold on a second, another word. Canonical. Make sure Canonical rectification. The correspondence with Francois Massapro, of which all the significant abstracts are published in the first section of this part, comes from the file that Massapro deposited at the Institute of some French institution. A good number of letters have come conserved, attesting to the remarkable editorial venture. These letters provide the first inventories of Fanon's writings. On the second section, we present the correspondence relating to the Italian publication of Fanon's works. Nalmen Stravas, I can't say it, discovered this correspondence in the archives of Giglio and I can't say it, publishing house, and in those of the another French word, family. In her introduction to that section, she indicates its context and significance. Number 1, correspondence between Francois Massapro and Fanon, 1959. On June 18th, 1959, Francois Massapro wrote to Franz Fanon in the following terms. A mutual friend has informed me that you have just completed a new book. I was also reading the remarkable article published in Les Temps Modernes, I think it's French, which I believe is taken from it. I have just created a collection essentially focused on the defense of freedom. On 1 volume per month will be published, and the so-called left press has flagged great interest in the collection. I'd be happy, more than happy, enthusiastic to publish your book in it. My admiration for Piau, I think it's Wretched of the Earth, gives me no more than enough confidence in your next work. And given its topical character, I would be ready to put it to press immediately and to prioritize this publication before all others. The minimum print runs as is 3,500 copies. Fanon answered quickly. June 1959. FF to Francois Massapro, Monsieur. Here is my reply. The manuscripts of my consent to go to press immediately. After receiving your letter, I broke off the other approaches and had made to have it published in French. However, I must go on a trip very soon and for the indeterminate period of time, which risks delay us as far as the signing is concerned. It would be perfect at any case, quicker, if that issue could be settled in a different way, and if, for example, the present letter would suffice. In any case, continue to write to me at the same address, and as far as is possible, my mail will be forwarded to me. I thank and congratulate you for your courageous attempts to create such an publishing house, which all my comradeship Fanon. On a separate piece of paper, there's a French words that I can't say. Introduction. The veil Algerian is unveiled. This is the voice of Algeria, the family, medicine, the minority. Conclusion. The introduction, the second chapter, and the minority, but on this refer to the text of Les Temps Modernes, were perfectly revised. In July 1959, Francois Massapro wrote Fanon 2 letters to announce that he would publish that what was to be something in the Algerian Revolution. In the first date, 1st July, he stated, "It is rather likely that the book will be seized upon publication. This is a great risk for me, not only a financial one, but and assumed it gladly. I would only ask that you authorize no further publications. The excerpts and of course that you do not announce the edition He added that this only modification would be to withdraw the excerpt from La Questions by Henry Ageling. Aling. Since this book is unfortunately still banned, the authorities could use it as a pretext to ban yours. He concluded, quote, that I said I can only repeat how happy I am to publish a book of this worth. I believe in its utility. Its profound humanity ought to be contributed a new element in a dialogue that so many of us here wish not to see die out. Excuse me. Fanon replied to these questions on 18th July, but in the meantime he had written this to Messa Pro. Rome, 9th July 1959. Dear Monsieur, on the passage to Rome, for I fear a minimum period of 2 weeks, I ask you, if possible, to make contact with me as soon as you can, for reasons to do with your business. If you could, of the person who will put you in touch with me. I can't say the name. Clinique. Okay, it's all French. Sorry, everybody. Amicably Fanon. For this part, believe that the first letter dated 1st July was lost. Messer Pro wrote again in 15th July 1959 to reiterate the content. He added, there are clearly many chances that this book will be seen the light of day for very long. These are risks that I will willingly take, for I believe in the extreme utility of this text. God, I have heartburn. I need to burp and it won't let me burp. Are you firmly decided on the title? And its title in French. I have nothing against it in principle. On the contrary, it is just that such a precise title would seem to me to be the quickest way to invent seizure, which could even happen while the book is at binding. God, come on, just burp. For this example of and base reason, I would have preferred the vulgar title, the sort of birth of a nation. Take the example of, I can't say the word because it's in French. The binder thought it was a medical book. This is no more than a simple question. I will do whatever you decide. Fanon answers as follows. Rome 18, July 1959. Dear Monsieur, I received your letter on the 15th, and I'm replying to it without delay. It is correct that I did not get the letter you addressed in Tunis for reasons that are too long to go into. I sincerely regret that you are unable to come to Rome, as I would have liked to get to know you. I hope this meeting has been merely delayed. I shall answer the question you have asked me. First, like you, I think it would be risky to send me any copies, which is why I gratefully accept your offer to deal with the corrections as the extract of La Question. I'll leave it to your discretion, as I confess that I had not considered this passage superfluous. If you think that a simple reference is enough to reactivate the point I want to make, here I will come around to your view. Regarding the title, things seem to me somewhat more difficult. Indeed, people in Maghreb are already expecting the work to be published under this title. But I think that your concerns are sufficiently founded, and so I accept your suggestion for changing it. However, instead of Birth of a Nation, I prefer, for example, Reality of a Nation. I'll suggest another thing to you. Perhaps a flyleaf around the work could carry out original titles. Then you would be able to send these flyleaves abroad only. I would like to add yet another thing. I think that before you put the book into commercial circulation in France, you ought to expedite the largest possible number to the following countries: Tunisia, Morocco, Guinea, Senegal, Cameroon, French Antilles, Haiti, Switzerland, and Belgium, not taking into account our usual correspondence. The left-wing movement, having been informed about the work at publication in the countries that I have mentioned to you in fairly large distributions, is assured from the outset. I will indicate later where the royalties can be sent. Jesus Christ, come on. With all my comradeship, let me tell you also how much admiration I have for your courageous undertaking, Fanon. On 11th August 1959, Fanon wrote to Mesopro to say he had left Rome 8 days earlier and was again in Tunis. On 17th September, Mesopro wrote to announce that the book had been typeset and would finally be published with the initial title, as well as with the excerpt from La Question. However, he expressed his doubts about the introduction. I want to burp so bad, you won't let me. Okay. Thus, it seems to me that as if this text has been artificially penned into the book, properly speaking, rather than the presentation of the book, it is a statement of position, all the terms of which are implicitly, but always logically reprised in the ensuing chapters. Jesus, every time I fucking read. Ugh. So, it adds nothing in its essentially a statement of principles, a violent statement and lacking in nuance. Ultimately, the tone contrasts very much with the rest. It seems that the text was written very quickly, in contrast with the book itself. I had my impressions confirmed. I must tell you by Emmy Cesare, to whom I showed the book, and who is full of enthusiasm for it. He finds it in a concentrated force, and spoke of its conscious power and maturity, but was surprised not to discover these qualities in the introduction. In the end, it's being rapidly written, as barely subtle tone, rather seems to me to detract from all that follows. Hold on a second. So we're just getting in the letters and stuff. That's all we're doing is letters about the book. That's what we're doing right now. Besides the, in some sense, formal levels, there is a political level. Are you sure that everything will still be valid in 6 months' time? Is the text still timely? I cannot hide from you my personal doubts about this. One thing is sure. This is the first time that anyone has tried to publish the work of such an engaged figure in France. Perhaps in the circumstances it can take in a quasi-official value, the value of an answer, for instance. I can tell you that if it is seized, and I know that it will be seized if we leave it simply as is, our book with its introduction will find barely any support among the French left. The left you have already perfectly well judged inside the book, which otherwise, whether it is seized or not, will be happy to salute its lucidity, and thus propose to you to do the following. Cut out from this serious, penetrating, and timely book the appendix that is internal to it and seems less timely. Mesopro added that it would be possible to write another text without compromising the confidentiality of the undertaking of that. If Fanon wanted to have an introduction published, then he could do so by cutting simply the passage of the hunt scene of the French officer, since if he have the photos, will I do not and will be hard put to show them unless you send them to me, which would be worth it. He concluded by asking Fanon to send him the names of the journalist's friends for complimentary copies. Fanon immediately replied to him. I don't know if I like this letter stuff. It was just telling us about the letters. That's all it's doing. 664. I'm going to look ahead. We'll look at this. Jesus. It's just the letters. Guess we'll keep reading it. Oh my gosh. Alright, let's find out what happens in this, I guess. 364, right? Yeah. It's just the letters. Tunis. 21st September 1959. Monsieur, I received your letter, and I am answering it immediately. The problem that you raise are serious, and my freedom of maneuver is seriously limited. The reservation that you express about the introduction do not seem extraneous. The book must nonetheless be introduced, and I do not see how the pure and simple elimination of a chapter would maintain the book's cohesiveness. As it is possible for me to write anything else, I authorize you to decide whatever seems to you most appropriate. Either you remove the introduction, as you proposed, or you keep the last passage in which the book is announced, leaving out the political stance taken in which the polemical tone perhaps dominates. It is up to you to see. I leave it to you to judge. What you decide already has my agreement. Secondly, if you have perhaps summarized through the account given in the newspaper that the Dr. Omar, who was seriously wounded and against whom an attack was attempted in Rome, is in fact Dr. Fanon. I am practically still crouched down. It is difficult for me to give you the information that I ought to have supplied concerning the names of bookstores. The only address I have is a bookstore in Tunis. This is a friend. Besides, he will place an order. Also, the Fort de France. There's more French words. Third, please reserve some review copies for me, as I would like to give them to some friends leaving for China on 9th October. We received offers for a translation of the book there for the SP in France. I think that we have many mutual friends. Do not forget Pajou, who will review it in TM, nor Satri. As for Damon, I will think about it. If the circumstances are right, I will do what you ask for me. Cordially yours, Fanon. Visa was published in October, and Fanon wrote to Mr. Prost to express his satisfaction. This is just letters. We're just reading letters. That's all we're doing. Just reading letters. Tunis, 5th November 1959. Dear Monsieur, I have received your review copies. I have found the representation excellent, and your forward deft indeed. My silence was only the result of negligence from the person tasked with forwarding my mail. Hello. Obviously, I have also noted the silence of the leftist press, but that ought not surprise us. I would like, however, for you to give me some information about Caesar's attitude. A list of typos to the corrected follows. Here are 2 addresses to which you can forward the royalties. Roger Tebbs, Assurances, 59. The Dr. Jamir Institute, with all my comradeship, Fanon, 1960. This is just letters. In January 1960, Fanon sent a letter restating the previous one with a few changes, and sent several others shortly after. Dear Monsieur, it appears my last letter did not reach you, since I have received press clippings without a word from you, without any answers to certain questions that I asked you. The book presentation, as I said to you, is excellent, and your introduction is very deft. As for the almost total silence from the so-called leftist press, that ought not surprise us. I would nevertheless like to have some more information about César's attitude of which you spoke to me. The remainder draws up the identical list to the previous letters of typos addressed. Amicably yours, Fanon. Tunis, 8th February 1960s. My dear friend, I have to leave Tunis very soon for the indefinite, but it seems rather a long time. So I will ask you not to send the royalties. I received the statement, thank you, to the addresses I indicated to you, but instead to get in contact with Mondabos Reservoir, I can't say these, are all French, who will supply you with the checking account number. At this point, I would like to thank you for everything, for what you do, but also for what you are. My friendship, you should know, is ever yours. Between now and the end of the year, you will receive another manuscript that I intend to write. You can write to me again at the same address in Tunis for another 10 days. Let us say that 18th February is the last day on which I can receive mail at this address. Amicably yours, Fanon. Accra, 18th April 1960. Dear friend, I'm reading about the seizure in the newspaper. I hope that this matter did not leave you to much serious financial trouble. I announced to you a second work on Algeria. I hope to have it done by the end of August, mid-September. See if you can also consider its translation into English. Here is my proposal. Address: Private Box 279848, Accra. With all my friendship and 1960. Due. Our letter on April 18th gave me, as always, the greatest pleasure. The seizure of, can't say that word, as you must know, occurred right at the end of the print run. When we were hoping to reprint it, it stopped sales for a moment on the commercial circuit. We hope all the same to be able to print in the month or two from now. For this occasion, I do not intend to leave this first preface, whose time is up. Within 15 days, I will send you a text of a new preface, which takes a far clearer stance in favor of the cause you defend. For there is no doubt that the cause of the Algerian Revolution is also in France in cause of democracy. I am looking very forward to your second book concerning its translation into English. I can say nothing right at this moment since it's still open to an American publisher who has yet to reply. My warmest friendship. Another letter. On 27th May 1960, Fanon sent a description request to France Overture, L'Express, et Le Monde for M. Ferris, P.O. Box 2747. Accra. Next, we have rather dense series of very important letters from Fanon. Accra, 20th July 1960s. Monsieur Francois Messaprou, 40 Rue Saints, can't say the word. Dear Monsieur, I have received rather belatedly your letter about the preface for the new edition and 2 copies of the new edition. I have never received the draft preface, but after reading it in the book, I tell you with all my heart that you did well in presuming my agreement. I am also glad that you reprised the text of Accra's lecture, but I will not hide from you that some of the cuts you made did not allow me to rediscover my fundamental point. Though I think that the difficulties you may come up against suffice to explain your decision. I am writing the work that I have already mentioned to you, but I am moving around a great deal, and events go by so quickly that it should primarily be taken at the same level as a log. When explosive the everyday, even if interpreted by the method naturally imposed, dialectical, cross-checking, and the integration, but also psychological, and why hide it, psychopathological elements. Some critics I know approach me for my jargon. When the time comes, I will I will perhaps say to these critics, just as Laboeuf showed in his studies on the French Revolution, that fear inferiority complex and resentment sometimes gives to an event an orientation of a form that a dialectical study does not provide for. If you see Jean-Pierre Sartre, tell him that I've had the chance to obtain his latest book, and me such great intellectual satisfaction and a better understanding of things. Amicably yours, Fabrice. I don't know if I like these these letters. They're just talking about, I don't know. It might fascinate other people, but to me it's like, okay, great. Talking about a book. Putting it together. I can't say this word. It's Luciana, some person's name. 27th July 1960s. Dear Monsieur, I have received new news from F, who asked me to write to you about the matter of the book that he announced to you some time ago. The book has been started, and I shall have the chapters sent to you as soon as I receive them. Could you tell me fairly quickly if you would agree to publishing it? The rough plan is as follows. Subject: based on the armed revolution in the Maghreb and the development of consciousness and national struggle in the rest of Africa. Titled Algiers, Cape Town. Chapter breakdown. 1. Wars of the Maghreb and liberation of Africa. 2. Notes on courage in Algeria. 3. Morality and revolution in Algeria. 4. Notes on psychiatric and war. 5. Violence in Africa. 6. Psychology and history. 7. Negritude and Black African civilization and mystification. Can you send to Accra, to the same name, the same address, your most recent publication, notably those of Nazan? Thank you. Here is where you ought to reply to me. Care of Emmy Ponce. I can't say the rest of the words because it's all in French. Best wishes, Nadia Fares. Genevieve, September 2nd, 1960. Dear Monsieur! Sorry. Though complete, the text of the first chapter of that word is not yet fully with me. I will nevertheless send you soon whatever I have received of it. Fanon originally wanted to have this first chapter published, NTM. But, on the other hand, I received the text of the lecture given to the Congress of the World Assembly, a youth of Accra University, on 1960. Fanon asked you to have these texts published in TM, or can't say that word because it's in French. Well, see what we can do. What can be done. The letters that you wanted given to him has more or less gone astray. Somehow receiving it in Conakry gave it to another person who is traveling somewhere in Africa at this time. He nevertheless hopes to retrieve it soon. Here is my address for the month of September 38, Chamise del, I can't say the words, in Switzerland. Best wishes, Nadia Farad. On 13th September, Messa Pro wrote to give him details of the scales pointed out to Fanon, that despite the distribution difficulties, the sales were continuing very steadily. On 19th September 1960, however, he received from Alou Dapou, director of the Presence Africaine, the following letter. Monsieur, I write to inform you that the Dr. Frantz Fanon, who I recently met in Conakry, would like to entrust us with the manuscripts of his next book in order that it has a better distribution in Africa. He asked me to speak to you about it. I will gladly meet with you upon my return from Africa. Yours sincerely, Dope. He sent Fanon a copy of it with the following letter. Paris, 24th September, 1960s. Dear Monsieur! I'm sorry, everybody. I just I don't like this type of reading. Someone else might. I got the letter of which I've attached to a copy for you. Here, I receive it the day after the examining magistrate notifying me of my charge for publishing your book. The 8th day after a new police raid on my premises. This letter, which is not accompanied by any news from you, is like a nightmare for me. I thought that the conditions under which I publish your book, and even more the improbable ones under which I republished it, something that I am convinced no other publisher would have wanted to face, and had created between us something other than fragile relations between a publisher and an author, a genuine friendship. It may be that you are not happy about the book's distribution, but I don't know. But I measure it against the daily works of militant distribution, which we have set down to doing ever since its publication. The bookstore, can't say it because it's in French, accounts for 20 copies for this distribution, all 20 of which were sold before the seizure, since it refused to continue to sell the book afterward. For me, our book represented everything that I wanted my book series to be: revolutionary and violence. I have always considered it the most important of all I have published. I will understand then my passionate reaction. That said, so be so kind as to inform me. Rather, this is not ultimately all a misunderstanding, and whatever the case resets assures my unwavering friendship. We do not have the reply to this letter. The fact is that Messerpo was going to be the publisher of that huge book. The new title Fanon gave to his original project, but those scopes would become wholly different. Tunis, 31st October. Dear Monsieur, your solution to have a booklet with a large print run seems to me an excellent one. I hope that you did not await my reply before proceeding. Your letter from the 18th reached me on the 29th. I am very glad about your trip here. God, it's fucking... You will understand then, if you do not already, the reasons for my role as an intermediary between you and F, and then I will be able to hand you the manuscript directly, which seems preferably to me. There is one total complete chapter, plus the beginning of another, one that I have received, Morality and Revolution, that I am getting typed up. I've passed on my letters. Amicably, Nadi Fariz. I want to see something. If this is all letters, I don't know if I can handle this. Other people probably could, but I don't like it. I'm gonna add a bookmark real quick. I'm just check something here. How long are these letters? Where do these letters go to? Okay. Is that the end of it? Is it gonna be? Okay. So the letters do not last the whole time through, which is good. I like that. All right. So gotta bear through it. Tunis, 7th April, 1961. Dear friend, my state of health having slightly improved is of late. I have decided to write at least something. I must say that I was firmly urged to do so by our people. It has become something completely different to what I mentioned to you 8 months ago. I ask you, and I know that you will grant me this, to hasten the printing of this book. We need it in Algeria and in Africa. I will send you the chapters one after the other. Ask Satri to preface me. Tell him that I think of him each time I sit down at my desk. He has written things that are so important for our future, but that over there find no readers who can yet read, or over there no readers at all. Send me a letter in which you indicate a safe address. My dear Mesopro, I would really like for this book to come out at the end of June. Yours in friendship. F. Ferrers, keep writing to the newspaper. This July 12th, May 1961, Dear Mauricio, try not to hold this against me. Try not to hold this against me, as I have some bad news. You will not receive the manuscript at the indicated date. A number of events, some of which you are aware, have torn me from the writing of this book, which all in all is less important than the current going on. I am sending you a third chapter. I hope to finish the last one, which bears no national culture in a while. For the publication, this means we've been set back to the beginning of October. I have written to this effect to Paju and Satri that you will now have the chance I would like during the summer months for you to send me the proof to correct. I have the impression of having been very overtly vehement in my descriptions. What is at stake just seems terribly compromised to me. With regrets for this delay, Fanon. Tunis, 22nd May 1961. Dear friend, I received a letter from Perilia. I replied to him and gave my assent. Can you give me some news about the translation request concerning Poland and Czechoslovakia? Have you received a reply? Amicably yours, Fanon. Tunis, 25th July 1961. Dear friend, sent you an integral and definitive manuscript. I will ask you with particular insistence to get everything underway so that this text comes out at the beginning of September. This may be difficult for you, but only precise the important political consideration lead me to insist upon you. As you have realized, this book is neither more or less than an attempt to situate the developing world doctrinarily in relations to the West. You speak to me about, I can't say the word. I must say that I do not understand very well the problems that you pose. This book, which you tell me is out of stock, is requested everywhere in Africa and the liberated, I can't say that, in Tunis. Just inform me that it received a negative reply from you to my request to relinquish the stock. I am still aware today of the print run of second edition. If you want to do a third, please go ahead. In any case, there is no way I can do a Miss Talion. 2 years ago, I wrote on the Algerian Revolution, and that gave rise to, I can't say that word because it's in French. If you considered a new edition necessary from the political and commercial points of views, then do one. As for the chapter of intellectuals of the revolution, you may have noticed that it constitutes an annex of chapter 4. And I can't say the name because it's in French, titled of the next book. If you still have the intentions of republishing another French word, let me know, and I will indeed write an introduction. Fanon. Tunis, 10th August. I hope I'm almost done. I'm going to put a bookmark in here. 673. Okay, 2 more pages. Let's go. 673. All right, 3 more pages, everybody. Dear Monsieur, I received your letter on 20th July. I hope that you have also received my recent note, which aims to draw your attention to the necessity to publish the new work at the beginning of September. I think that this is going to work out. The title on which I have definitely set is, I can't say that word because it's French. I ask you with insistence to examine carefully the issues of distribution, among other places, to Africa and to Latin America. I do not know the size of the first print run, but I think it is necessary to publish no less than 10,000. Political malus of the developing world are furiously awaiting this book. I believe that Satri will make haste. It is important that you specify to him the deadlines of the preface. In any case, I ought to see him in some days. Keep me up to date about, I can't say that word because it's in French, and about what you decide concerning the possible third edition of The Person in French. Amicably, Fanon. Mr. Pro wrote to Fanon on October to announce the publication of the French word I can't say. 3rd October, 1961. Dear friend, some very good news. Satri's preface is ready. Beautiful, violent, and useful. In any case, for us French. Claude Lazaman has sent you a copy of it, I believe. Your book will thus come out in October. I will do all I can in order to make it the major event that it ought to be. I am preparing the new edition of the French Word with the unpublished preface. Since your brother told me this is your wish, the contract with the Polish is signed. It unfortunately does not come with an advance, but right in the non-transferable zealots, I can't say this word, to be paid after publication. They appeared very impatient for this for this. What's more, I've attached a copy of their last letters. See what you can do as regards this topic. I'm sending you today a postal mandate of 2,000 NFs, new francs, in advance of your royalties. I was glad to see your brother, who was able to give me some more precise news about you than I'm ordinarily getting. Give my dear friend Ferriers, ever your sincere friend, Francisco Messerpo. Tunisia, 18th October 1961. Dear friend, I received your letter, the postal order. I thank you. For the Polish people, you can tell them that Ferriers is not able to do anything for them at this time, so they can publish it as is. Perhaps they could be content to have the unpublished preface. See for yourself. Concerning that preface, Ferriers intended to write another for the second edition and send it to you. If you are not in too great a hurry, perhaps it would be possible with a bit of time. I think that his brother did not understand properly. You ought to know that via Lazamanen, I can't say his name, that F has been seriously ill and had to leave hastily to receive treatment abroad. Amicably, Nadia. The last conserved letter from Messerpo to Fanon is dated 26 October 1961, addressed to, I can't say that word because it's all in French, Tunisia. Dear friend, thank you for the letter. In the meantime, I have got the news about Ferrier from Lazman. Can't say these names. Would it be possible to have his address so that I can send him his book as soon as it is published? This, I believe, is alas the only concrete proof of friendship that I can extend to him at a distance. Do you have a copy of the unpublished preface of the first edition? In fact, there has been so much commotion here that, thanks to my putting it away for safekeeping, I can no longer find it. If you have it, can be so kind as to send it to me urgently. I would actually like to take advantage of the new book's publication in order to revive the older one. The book is coming out in the first week of November. Ever your sincere friend. In November 1961, Claude wrote the following to Messerpo. My dear Messerpo, here is Fanon's address. Dr. Abraham Fanon, 13th East National Institute of Health, Bethesda, Maryland, USA. Do not forget the Ibrahim. It is important. If I can do anything at all to help you, do not hesitate to ask me. See you soon. A handwritten note added to this letter indicates urgent. Sent 20 Fanon. Airmail. Done 1611. All right. And that's the end of the dang letters. I'm glad it wasn't the whole thing. All right. And you know what? We'll stop right here. And we'll stop right here in chapter 2 of unit 4 on page 678. Add a bookmark. There's only 2 people here anyways. Ain't nobody here. Just us, just the regular people. Everybody probably got tired of the fucking notes. I don't know. Or me reading them at least. So yeah. All right then, everybody. So that was great. I loved his political writings. They were pretty good. It looks like they're trying to get like maybe the rest of the earth together and stuff like that during those letters and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll start chapter 2, the Italian Fanon, unearthing a hidden editorial history. So I wonder what this is about. Probably about his book. Probably all about his book. But after this, we'll read a different book. So, all right, everybody, I'm gonna go fix my heartburn.